Hi, I'm Jen Dalton with Brand Mirror, and I've started doing interviews with people that I call noise breakers. People who are noise breakers are people who are clear on their message and are really finding new, creative, and courageous ways to get their message out. So today I'm speaking with Mark Silverman. He's my inaugural interview, and he's launched a new podcast. And so we're going to ask him questions about that and really dig into his personal brand, the podcast, and when it's coming out. So Mark, please introduce yourself. Thanks for joining me today.
Jen, thanks for considering me an expert on being a noise breaker. That's so exciting. I am an executive coach in the Washington, D.C. area, though my clients are around the globe because I do most of it on Zoom like this. My general audience are executives who are in the corporate world, who are climbing the ladder. I work on resilience, I work on leadership skills and that kind of thing. Why we're talking is because of the shift in my brand and the more focusing of my brand and the podcast. I was writing a book called Mastering Midlife, the adventures of being in your 40s and 50s. That morphed into a podcast, and that morphed into me really laser focusing my brand on the people who are transitioning in life into that next phase where the pressures and the success and all that need to be dealt with in a different way.
When you choose topics, are they business focused only? Are they life focused? How have you approached picking topics, and how many interviews have you done so far?
So I've done 20 interviews. So the way to launch a podcast is to have 10 podcasts ready to go so people have a library to go with. But so I actually am picking the topics not so much to stay on health and nutrition or in those lanes, but more, what is someone like me who has children in college, who has risen to a point in the career where there's stresses and responsibilities with the elderly parents. What do we deal with? So we deal with sex. How does sex and relationship change as we get older? We deal with the pressures of becoming a leader in an organization. We deal with the pressures of having to travel in business and juggling family. And we also, deal with health. Like exercise is very different in your 40s and 50s and 60s than it is, going to CrossFit in your 30s. So how do we deal with each one of those things? We have to deal with grief. We have to deal with mental illness. Suicide is becoming the fastest killer of people who look like me. That's frightening to me. So we're talking about all these subjects.
I love that. And so are you tying this into your book as well? How does this show up in your digital presence or other content that you're creating?
So it started out as a book. And what I noticed was I was interviewing so many people for the book. I wanted to capture this, which gave me the epiphany that this has to be a podcast. And I want this captured as a body of work, as a library of work. So now it's actually in my digital presence. It's almost everything that I put out in the world is, one, since we're talking about branding, I get the double whammy of branding myself plus the other person's audience.
Sure.
I instead of people seeing just me over and over and over on LinkedIn or on Twitter, they see me and a subject. They see me in different subjects. So for me, it's really broadened my appeal. I'm getting calls and messages from people that I haven't heard from in 10 years that they're seeing me on LinkedIn doing this. So it's been really fun to see how it resonates.
So tell me what success at the end of this year with the podcast, how will you feel like it's really driven change and gotten the message out and made talking about mastering midlife easier? What would success look like for you?
So I'm gonna do that in tiers. The first piece of success for me is I already feel like I've created something with the 20 interviews and my own solo contributions. I feel like I've created a body of work that I could leave as a legacy. I'm really moved by what has been created with this. So that's a success in and of itself. The second success is, does it feed my pipeline of clients? Am I finding the right clients who I am a perfect fit for? I can help them get where they want to go. And, they feel vice versa with me. So if I get my clients, that's a success for business. And then we'll go for 1 million downloads by the end of the year.
Woohoo. That's awesome. I love it. You said earlier that you want to have an inventory of podcasts before you launch. What else have you learned about podcasting or about yourself as you've launched this? Any aha moments that you can share, pearls of wisdom?
One is, when Seth Godin and all the other people, purveyors of go out and do it, say, just go out and do it. Absolutely. Just go out and do it. I have a microphone here. I have a light, I have a camera, and the whole thing cost me $150. I now have a voice to put out in the world, right? So just go and do that. When you press publish, just deal with that fear and just do it. I have something to say. I have something to share, whether it's for one person or millions. I don't really care at this point. I want to express what needs to come out. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that if you don't have the money, just do it. Just publish it. There's free ways of doing this. It's no big deal. You can even just put it on YouTube. But if you can spend $300-400 a month and do a podcast in a box with a company like I'm using a company called Podcraft, where they basically put everything together for you. That way you have a professional presentation there. And then if you can go to the next level, which I didn't understand, and this was the surprise, because I thought I was just going to put this out in the world. I actually hired someone. By the time the podcast comes out, my website will be completely different, and it will be a lead generation funnel for the podcast. So I'll be talking about my website on the podcast, what I'm giving away on my website for the podcast to capture the clients who are interested in me. Well, then I'll give them something, and I'll give them videos, and I'll give them product. And then that filters them even further to see who's my client. But I didn't know that when I first started this. I've learned this as I've gone along.
Fabulous. So who are some of the interviewees that you'd like to have?
I'd like to have, well, my dream is Brene Brown, not because everybody wants to talk to Brene Brown, but because she wrote a specific piece on midlife that is so moving that I want to talk to her about that. But there's some famous people I'd love to talk to, but mostly I want to talk to people who can relate and who can give a piece of gold. I mean, some of these people are on tons of podcasts and you can get their gold. I want people who can relate. I'm speaking to someone later this afternoon who's going to teach people how to date in their 40s and 50s. Right? I want to have interviews with people who can actually, when this body of work is done, unless it keeps on going, that there's a library that people can thumb through of what you deal with when you're this age. What do you do when you're empty nesters? How do you deal with that? Right? What do you do when someone dies? What do you do if someone in your life is an alcoholic or a drug addict and they're going down the tubes? How do you deal with that? Because we all deal with that. How do you lose weight when you're 50? I used to be able to lose weight like that. It's not the same thing anymore. So what I'm finding is that I'm getting messages from all over the country just from the podcast isn't even out. I got a message yesterday from a woman who said, I showed the advertisement of your podcast to my husband and he cried. He can't wait for it to come out because people aren't talking about this.
Absolutely. I think people do get more and more private, and we're already private to begin with. And especially if it's about sex or money or death, everything is off the table. Very often people just are in their heads with their own thoughts. They don't know how to talk about it. So I love that your podcast is providing a space for them to hear a conversation, to have questions answered in their own mind by just listening. How can people find your podcast if someone's interested and wants to contribute some of the gold, as you said, or even just reach out and contact you? What's the best way for them to do that?
So my website is markjsilverman.com. Mark the letter J Silverman.com, and it'll be very clear once it's published where to find the podcast. It's going to be on iTunes, it's going to be on Stitcher, it's going to be on SoundCloud, and the videos, I actually did the videos with captions, are going to be on YouTube. So it'll be on all the normal places, but you'll be able to find me, get in contact with me on my website.
Fabulous. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time. I cannot wait to listen to your podcast and listen to all 10 right away, because I know they'll all be available and amazing. Do come back and hopefully check in 6 months from now and let me know how things are going. And hopefully between now and then, we'll get Brene Brown on the radar for you.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Bye.